Good morning. It is a rainy day in Toronto. Today I'm going to be talking about something that is getting attention in the media that should have gained attention years ago. And that's the shared economy, new economy revenue that's been coming into the city, and specifically Airbnb and Uber type of new economy revenues. Now, I had done a post about this on my website about the CRA actually devoting $500 million to ramping up its resources to go after the new economy, shared economy, and they specifically did mention Airbnb and Uber. I sent out a caution to people that were actually hosting Airbnb to let them know that they should be reporting it, and if they're not, that sooner or later the CRA will catch them and there will be significant consequences according to the CRA rules. Now, what's been happening is in the media yesterday, the City of Toronto announced they're actually now looking at launching a number of rules and regulations around Airbnb hosts. Now, there's a number of issues around this, and the reason I'm surprised this wasn't launched 2 years ago is because we've seen the headlines where individuals have actually rented condo units in homes and turned around and sub-rented them when it was against either the condo rules or even their lease agreement. And they basically would rent them out by the night and make thousands and thousands of dollars in profit at the expense of the homeowner, because in a lot of cases damage would be done and wear and tear, and problems with also the property managers, because their units were being used as hotels and in a way they should not have been used. So the city decided to do a number of things all around taxing and permitting and regulating and possibly zoning as well. And I think it's a great idea because as a resident, I like to know who's going to be spending the night in my neighborhood, and there's really no vetting that takes place through Airbnb other than supposedly collection of information when they register with Airbnb. So you don't know who ends up as a neighbor, and I'm really sensitive to this because a few years ago in Markham there was a situation with Cecilia, 13-year-old girl I believe she was, who was basically she was in the middle of the night visited, ended up being killed, and the perpetrator took off to China. And there was no update as to any consequences, if any, that happened to this individual. But someone's 13-year-old daughter basically was taken from them and killed. So that is something that quite a few Torontonians that live here are still sensitive to. A lot of new Torontonians are not aware of. And that's one of the big fears that residents have when it comes to Airbnb and renting homes by the room, because there's no control, regulation, monitoring of that. It's a big risk, a social risk. So I just want to be clear as to what one of the fundamental underlying concerns is around this. It's not just economic. Now, on the economic side, it's another story. So people that rent these places, people are making money in these places. They're renting to individuals that they tax the infrastructure. They wear and tear in the infrastructure. They use the utilities. These homes are using a lot more of the infrastructure than if there was just a family living in them. So who's paying the price? The regular Torontonians. They use their homes as a place to live, so that they could work and raise their children in the city, as opposed to tourist individuals that may be just visiting. So there's no additional taxes being paid by people that use Airbnb. Therefore, it makes sense for Airbnb hosts to be paying an extra tax to cover their share of that extra wear and tear. Now, Airbnb came out with an argument saying, these are grannies and hardworking individuals that need the money to pay their mortgages. That is true to a degree. There are a lot of individuals that need that money. Taxes are high in Toronto, very high, and they need to find ways to pay down their mortgage, especially if they bought their homes in the last 3 years with these skyrocketing prices. If they bought their homes more than 5 years ago, then they should be in a much better position in terms of the value of their home to their mortgage. But anyway, that's neither here or there. The important point is that I don't believe for a second that the majority of Airbnb hosts are there to help pay off their mortgage. What I've seen is individuals that have found a way to make tremendous amounts of money off Airbnb, and they've done it by renting condos and homes and then subleasing them out. One individual I came across actually has 6 condo units he's purchased. He started 2 years ago, I think he said 2.5 years ago, by renting out one unit and then turning around and posting an Airbnb by night. And he was able to pull in $6,000 a month. Here's the thing, is that I don't know if they're declaring this as income. I doubt it, because at the rate of which he was able to save money and buy 6 condo units within 2.5 years from one that he was leasing, that he had leased and subleased. You do those numbers, and it doesn't make sense. So he had to have. I think he wasn't declaring his income. Basically, that rather than pay that 54% above the $244,000 a year that he had making, that he wasn't declaring any of it and keeping 100% of his income. So just to put in perspective, if he's making more than $244,000, every additional dollar you have to give 54 cents of that, most of it, to the Canadian government, the provincial and federal governments. You have to give 54 cents of every dollar that you make to the government above $244,000. So you keep 46 cents, the government takes 54 cents for all money above $244,000. So if you do those numbers, how can somebody really accumulate enough money to buy 6 condo units within 2.5 years? So he's not the only case I've heard of. I almost got caught. Well, I didn't almost get caught because I go through my regular process, but I was looking to rent out one of my clients' homes a couple of years ago, about 1.5 years ago, and the homeowner was very excited about this one applicant. We had a few applicants, and the applicant was very strong and provided all the information. When I was going through the due diligence, calling the work references and checking the report, and I discovered they actually owned a home. So they owned a home and they lived in this home, and this home was in a more central neighborhood. It did not make sense to me why they would want to move. I asked them, look, you have a home, why would you want to rent this one? The reply was they were planning to rent the home they were in then because they could get more money for it and then move a little bit farther out from the core and live in this home, which was a little bit more spacious and more comfortable. I didn't buy that. It did not make sense to me at all. You know, if that's what they wanted, they could have sold their home and bought a better home and pocketed some money farther out. It did not make sense to me. The answers they were giving, and the whole thing to me smelled. So and also the way they were answering my questions, I could tell they were holding stuff back. They were up to something. I believe they were actually trying to scoop the home so they could turn around and put it on Airbnb. And the home is perfect for it because it had 5 bedrooms, 3 upstairs, 2 downstairs. It had a little wet bar downstairs and a partial basement, partial bathroom as well. Plus they had a loft, veranda and porch, closed-in porch in the back. So that would have been perfect for Airbnb, and they would have made a lot of money off that. So I think that's what they're up to. When I did my my due diligence, I spoke to the homeowner and explained to her what I thought was going on and what didn't make sense. She agreed with me that she wasn't willing to take the risk, and good that she didn't, because if they had rented that out, they would have destroyed a newly renovated home, and that would have been a real pity. So there you have it. These are examples of the situation that Airbnb is in Toronto. You have an example of what the company is saying is good about Airbnb. And don't get me wrong, it's a great service. I've never used it. I like the concept. However, it because it's new, it hasn't been managed properly. And it's time that there's a little bit of regulation that gets put into it to make sure that what they take out of the system, they put back in terms of their share of taxes, and that they keep the neighborhood safe, and that it's reported properly, and that the guests are kept safe with the proper fire code and everything else that you would expect for short-term rentals. Because remember, people that are in short-term rentals, they spend that night, they live a little bit differently than if they were to be there for months. Or for years. So all that has to be considered. You can make sure that things are done properly. You don't want people to die, and that because nobody wins when that happens. And though Toronto has amazing building codes and among the best, if not the best in the world, if they're not adhered to, things can go awry and people can die. So anyway, there's my perspective in Airbnb. I'm going to keep an eye on it because I think this is only the beginning. I think you're going to see a lot more things happening with Airbnb, and I'm waiting for Airbnb to give a proper response to what's happening, other than it's a necessary service that grannies need to pay their mortgages. I don't think that's an appropriate response to the underlying concerns as to why Airbnb needs to be regulated, being primarily taxation, safety for the guests, and also safety for the neighborhood. So there you have it. If you have any questions or comments, please comment below. And you know how to reach me. It's on the website, baldominaldo.com. And I'll speak with you soon. Bye now.